All right, well, we are straight up on at 11 o'clock here on the West Coast. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the Mylio Photos Coffee Break. My name is Angela Andrieux, and I'm a product evangelist for Mylio. Most of you have been to these sessions before, so you probably already know me, but what a product evangelist does is primarily education and documentation, and I'm here to help you be successful with Mylio. So what we do in these sessions is cover individual topics. So today we're talking about categories. What are they and how do you use them? And to do that, I've brought in my friend and colleague, JC, to help present. JC is our customer success lead. So if you ever have to contact our support team, it's his team that's going to be getting back to you. They're super, super smart people. In addition to being on our tech team, JC is also an avid underwater photographer. So I'm going to guess that his categories involve something with underwater as well. JC, welcome, and I will turn the floor over to you.
All right. Thank you, Angela, and welcome everyone. Happy to be here, and hopefully we can learn some things about categories today. So what I like to do is I'd like to share my screen and show you my personal Mylio library, which indeed does have quite a few underwater photos amongst other types of photos. And if I'm scrolling to here, you'll notice that there's family photos, photos of my daughter, my wife and I, there's wildlife photos, there's other photos, and there's some underwater photos. But if I only wanted to look at my underwater photos, the best way for me to do that with Mylio would be to filter by that category. And that's because of the up to 50 categories that you can add to Mylio, one of them I set up as underwater photos. And let me show that really quickly, and then we'll go back and discuss why categories, when to use them, and more importantly, how to use them. So I want to see my photos based on categories. And notice that right now, I'm in my all photos view. All the photos are showing up. Right now, they're sorted by rating. If I go over here to the more menu and I look at the sorting, you'll notice that it's sorted by rating. If you bear with me for just a minute, I'm going to change a few settings on my computer really quickly. This is a new computer that I'm just presenting with for the first time. So I want you to be able to see things better. So I'm going to change the cursor.
It's looking pretty good.
Was it?
Yeah, I can see it. Oh, now it's much bigger. That's cool.
Yeah. All right.
That helps.
Now you can see it. All right. So, wow, that's bright. Okay. So notice that I'm sorted by rating, and I'm looking at all my photos. If I go over to the calendar view, I'm looking again at all of my photos. You see in the calendar view, there is quite a variety of what photos Mylio is featuring as the photo in this case for the year. But if I were to step into any one year, the photo that is being featured for every month is also varies quite a bit. And if I go to the map, it also shows me it's all the way on the Maldives. Let's go over here back to where we live. You'll notice that there's all kinds of photos being featured on the map as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the all photos view. I'm going to click on the filter icon here, the little funnel. And I'm going to ask Mylio to filter my entire library based on category. So I'm going to move over here to the category section. And Mylio shows me all the categories that I have added to my library. Some categories are there by default. Others you can add yourself. And like I mentioned, you can have up to 50 different categories. One of the most important categories in my library is the underwater photo category. So once I click that, I'm going to click the funnel again. And I didn't turn the funnel off. I just uncollapsed the user interface for filters so that they're not all in my way. But I'm still getting a little summary there that tells me, okay, you're filtering by underwater. Notice that now as I scroll to my photos, it's only showing me underwater photos. And that's going to be pervasive on all the different views of Mylio. So if I go over here to my calendar now, is showing me that for every year, the photo that's being highlighted is a photo corresponding to the underwater category. And, you know, before 2003, I didn't take any underwater photos. There were a few years there where I was too busy with life, so I also didn't take photos. And in the recent years, I started taking photos again. So you see those happening more and more. And if I go into the month view, same thing. Different months are highlighted with those photos. The years and months during which there isn't any photos that correspond with the underwater category just show up as blank, because that's what I've asked Mylio to filter by. Same if I go to the map view here, if I zoom all the way out, you'll notice that the amount of photos being shown on the map is much fewer, because it's only showing me areas where the photos are specifically underwater photos. And as I zoom into any one area, those photos are being distributed accordingly. And I can then click and go to see all the photos that were taken in any one place. So as you can see, a category can be a very, very powerful way to interact with your library and to organize your library. But how does category compare to other types of organization that we do, right? Because we also rate our photos. We give them 1 to 5 stars. We can also add colors to our photos. And those colors can mean different things to different users. And then we can also go very, very precisely with every photo and add keywords, right? So if instead of just showing all the photos that I have that correspond to the underwater category, I could just go and say, show me all the photos that have a keyword dolphin, if I can spell. I have this theory that whenever somebody's looking at your screen, you lose the ability to spell.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah, I think it's true. So if I click dolphin now, I'm filtering just by dolphins, which is much fewer than all the other photos. So where does category make sense, right? Well, categories make sense somewhere between ratings and keywords. They are still a broad way to identifying your photos, but they don't need to be as precise as a keyword is. In my case, I have categories for family, I have categories for travel, I have categories for work, I have categories for underwater. Those are some of the major categories that I use. And if I only want to be looking at my family photos, I can very quickly select that category and only look at my family photos, and then all the underwater photos are not there, wildlife photos are not there. It's just family events that are going to be presented. So it's a broad way of categorizing things. And in Mylio, what's advantageous about using categories is that you can assign a category to a lot and lots and lots of photos very, very quickly with just a few keystrokes. A category can be assigned to a single image. I'm going to turn this filters off now. I'm going to hit clear and turn the filters off. We're not filtering, so we're seeing our entire library again. If I click on any one photo, you'll notice that one of the things that I can do to a photo is I can add a category to it. So here I have a photo of my wedding a few years back. I won't tell you how long, but it was a while.
But we can see the date and the timestamp, so there's that.
Fine. Yeah, our 10th wedding anniversary is coming up, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So if I scroll down in the information panel, I see that there's categories here, and there isn't a specific category assigned to that photo, but you'll notice that there's some inherited categories. And this is one of the things that I personally love the most about categories in Mylio, is that you don't have to assign the category to just a photo. I could go to this photo, click the plus button, and assign specific category, right? I could click the pencil and create a new category. Let's call it love, right? So now I created the love category, And every photo that represents love, I'm gonna assign that category to it. So I just assigned it to that photo. I think that photo of my daughter feeding my son would also benefit from that category, right? So I can go to that photo, click the plus sign. That category already is there because I already created it. So I can click that and apply. So now those photos specifically have that category, but you'll notice that the photo of the wedding has some other categories that are part of it. How did they get there? Well, you'll notice they are inherited categories. And an inherited category is something that is applied not to a photo, but to a container, right? In Mylio, you have different kinds of containers, and some of them you can assign a category to them. The one that is the easiest to understand and that makes the most sense is the folder container. If I go to my folder view and I go to my Mylio Pictures folder, there's a folder here called trips. And you'll notice that if I select a folder, so I'm in the folders view, I'm in the Mylio Pictures folder, and I have the trips folder selected. So what I'm seeing over here on the information panel is information about that folder, like the folder name, the range of dates that are part of that folder, photos that are part of that folder, the cover photo. But one of the items in this information panel is the category assigned to that folder. And because this is the folder for all my trips, I assigned the travel category to that folder. That means that anything that I put inside that folder is going to inherit that category. So if, and that folder is a big folder, it's a big part of my library. You'll notice there's 15,241 photos, and there's 61 subfolders inside of this folder. Oh, I'm sorry, 65. All 15,000 photos and all 65 folders are inheriting that travel category. So if I open that folder up and I go to click on Galapagos 2006, you'll notice that that folder has inherited the travel category. And there are subfolders within it. If I click on any one of those subfolders, they have inherited the travel category. But in this case, the underwater photos folder for the Galapagos trip has its own category assigned to it, which is the underwater category. So the other folders, you'll notice they only have the travel category inherited, but this particular underwater folder has the underwater photo category. So if I click on this folder and I touch one of these photos, does anybody guess what's going to happen to that photo? What categories are going to be inherited? Everything from the parent folders is going to be inherited. So it's a very hierarchical way of applying categories. This photo has travel and underwater as categories that have been inherited from the parent folders. So this is a quick way of me assigning categories to large group of photos without having to touch every single photo and adding specific keywords to them. So that's one of the two containers where you can assign a category and get all that categorization applied to everything within that container. So a folder will let all the subfolder and all the images within that folder and subfolders inherited the top categories. And you can be very hierarchical through it. The other container that can accept categories is events. So if I go over here back to my calendar view and I select a particular year, like 2022, you'll notice there's a couple of folders here. And you'll notice how the little dots, I'm sorry, there's a couple of events here. And you'll notice that each event has a different color dot. Those dots are corresponding to a category. And if I ask to edit the Puerto Rico 2022 event, one of the things you'll notice is that that event has inherited a category of travel. In this case, it's because that event was created from a folder. We won't get into that, but if you have questions, I'll tell you how you can do that. But this event has the travel category assigned to it. And if I were to show you my categories again, I'm going to go here into settings and general. And one of the things that I can see here is all of my categories. You'll notice that travel has that red dot. So if I were to edit that and change it to a different color, we can make it very custom. So let's make it aqua. Now the color for all my travel photos has changed. So notice that everywhere I look in my calendar view now, there's an aqua dot that represents travel, which makes sense because most of my travel is to some sort of water destination. So one thing I could do right here is I could go to Alex and Madeline's wedding. That's my daughter, edit that event, and I could assign a category to it. Notice this event doesn't have any categories. That's why the dot was gray. But I could say, you know what? This is a family event. Our family grew that day. So let's assign a category to that event of family. Apply that. And it's applying it not just because this event was created from a folder, it's applying it to the folder as well. And, oh, I didn't save it. Gotta hit that save button. Apply, yes, save. Okay, so now that event has the family category and all the photos from that event. So if I click on that event, I see all the photos that are related to this event, to the wedding. And if I click on any one of them, you'll notice that the category of family has been inherited as part of the event. That's my mom and my daughter. Doesn't get much more family than that. So I hope this is making sense. This is how you add categories to any one event. And depending how you create the event, when you add a category to it, that category is either going to be added to the folder because that's how the event was created, or it's only going to be added to the event. But in either case, all the photos contained within that container are going to inherit the category. So like if I went over here to my niece's wedding, I could assign the category family to that one. And now all the photos within that folder have the family category as part of it too. And this is how we use categories. They're wonderful when you're creating a lot of events because your albums, not your albums, I'm sorry, your calendar view starts becoming very colorful and very easy to recognize. You can at a glance say, oh, these are travel events, these are family events, these are underwater photos. So very quickly, you can see that categorization at a glance on your calendar view. But more importantly, you can use categories to very quickly find photos that are important to you. So if I want to find a bunch of family photos, instead of sorting by or filtering by the underwater category, I can just go to the family category, and every photo that has anything to do with my family is going to be represented now. So there you have it. That's how categories work. So that's
awesome and very helpful, very, very concisely explained for something it's one of those, it's not entirely buried features, but it's one of those that people look at and go, how does this actually affect things? So I think you explained that really well. Now, tell me, with categories, these are Mylio specific, correct? So if somebody adds categories, I believe the information is still saved in XMP, but it's something that only Mylio can read, correct?
Actually, yes. Yes is only a Mylio metadata set, and it is not written to the XMP.
Okay.
One of the things that we do at Mylio is that we try to adhere to standards as much as possible, specifically IPTC and XF standards. there isn't an IPTC standard for categories. So if we were to write those to XMPs, it would still only be readable by Mylio. So at this point, we don't write categories to XMPs. However, I believe that's changing for other reasons.
Yep, I think so.
But today, categories are only written to the Mylio catalog, to the database. So if you were to reset Mylio, categories is one of those things that you would have to recreate, which is the bad part, the sad part. The good part is that they're so easy to recreate that it's not that big a deal, right? It's not like recreating a bunch of albums, because you can just, like in my case, if I want to, because my photos are already organized by folder, let's clear this filter and turn it off. Because all my travel photos are already organized into one folder, all I have to do is assign a category to that folder, and everything within it is going to be changed. Same with Hannah here, right? Hannah is one of our no longer with us pets, but that folder has the category pets assigned to it. So every photo of Hannah is going to get that categorization right away.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, you were talking initially about the filtering abilities and being able to see certain parts of your library. I think that's super helpful, especially for people who use their library for personal pictures and work pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have, even if you just use those two categories to say, these are the ones that are personal and these are the ones that work. If you're working on work stuff, you can go ahead and turn on that filter, look at just your work photos and stay focused.
Yeah.
Or if you're at home and you're wanting to share things with family, you can switch to the personal category, and it hides then all of the work photos, so you can really focus on what's important at that moment. So I think that's a really neat feature.
Yeah, and for those of you that are either professional or amateur photographers, but like to try different kinds of photography, you can have a wildlife, a portrait, and a macro category. Mm-hmm. So if all you want to do is that you're way behind on your macro photo and you want to start editing and organizing those, as long as they're organized into categories that you can easily filter, you can assign it to it. And that's why events are so powerful, right? Because, for example, a lot of people organize their folder structure by year. So it's very likely that you're going to have macro photos spread across multiple folders, and you couldn't really assign macro or portrait. Let's use portrait. That's a great example. It's not likely that you're going to be able to assign portrait to just a set of folders and have it be as universally applied as what I've done with my travel photos, for example. But it is likely that if you're doing portrait photography, you have a specific event during which you did portraits, right? Like Saturday between 2 and 4, we were in the studio and we did a bunch of portrait photography. So you can create an event based on those dates, assign the portrait category to that event, and all the photos during that session are going to inherit that category without you having to touch every single photo. And then when you apply that filter of portrait, you're like, okay, here's my photos from Saturday. Let me edit those. Let me use Mylio's cool gesture features on my phone to reject the ones that are bad. Let me edit with another application and get a little noise correction going. And you're doing all that within a filter and not having to worry about the bunch of other photos in your library. I do that with my underwater photos all the time. If I were to show you my entire library, is 42,000 photos right now. Oh, where's my camera?
Just seeing the blue box.
There I am.
There you are.
Hey, hello again. You'll see that there's 42,000 photos in my overall library. I don't want to have to find all my underwater photos just within that huge set. But if I click underwater, then it goes down to 4,500. And if I were to add a rating of 0, that shows me all the underwater photos that I haven't rated. So now I have a much smaller group that I can work with and go, okay, why haven't not rated these photos? Is it because I haven't edited them? Is it because it's not really my photos? Yeah, those are TG6. That's my wife's camera. So I think I imported some photos for her. So these are not my photos. That's why they're not rated. But you saw how quickly I got from 42,000 to 4,500 to 3,000. And I could even apply a filter for just my camera, and say, okay, let's just use the photos that I like to, not that one, turn that off. Haven't owned that camera in years. But if I find my camera here, my Nikon D7200, which is the current camera I'm using underwater, now I'm down to 922 photos that have not been rated and are underwater photos. That's a much smaller group of photos for me to, excuse me, work through and organize. And there is the manta ray that about bowled me over in the Maldives. What other questions do we have?
So there's a question from Sandy in the chat. She says, if you travel to a certain location on occasion, how would you set it up using events, categories, folder categories? For example, I live near Washington, D.C. I have many trips to D.C. over the years with friends visiting or special events I attend. So what I would do, and JC, you might have a different way of doing this.
Yeah.
If it's a place that I'm traveling to often, I would actually add a geotag. And it doesn't have to be super precise, but I would grab all of those images that I spent going to DC and drag those onto the map in the map tab, and be able to find them really easily on the map. The other thing I would do is if it's travel, you could do the travel category. And then for specific events, especially if it's, your aunt and uncle are visiting and you wanted to show them the monuments and you spent 3 days around downtown, Washington, D.C., going through all that stuff, you could create an event on the calendar to find that and narrow it in even more.
Right.
So JC, what would you do?
Actually, I would pretty much use geotagging as the first classification. And geotagging a whole bunch of photos all at once is really easy by just dragging them into the map. So if you don't need to know precisely where in DC those photos were taken, just that they were taken in that general area, you can just drag them all there. I do that with my underwater photos. So you'll notice that if I apply that underwater category filter again, my map shrinks to only show those photos. But if I were to zoom in, even though there's a little bit of differentiation, a lot of the photos are going to be in the same areas because all I'm doing is I'm dragging to a specific area. GPS doesn't work underwater. I am never going to get precise location for my underwater photos unless I'm like taking notes as I go with a map and compass, which sounds like a lot of work. But what I do actually do is I take a photo with my phone while I'm on the surface. That photo now has GPS coordinates. And then when I get home and I import all my photos into Mylio, I copy the GPS coordinates from the iPhone photo to all of my camera photos for the photos that I took underwater. And now they're all categorized or geotagged with that particular dive site that the photo was taken in. The other thing that you can do is have a specific folder that you use for that location. So if there's a location that you visit consistently, or there's a special event that you have, you can create a subfolder within your larger folder structure that represents that event. Let me show you what I mean by that and why this is helpful. One of the ways in which my photos are organized is by year. So if it isn't a particular trip, or it isn't a particular item, like Miller House is all of our remodeling photos, right? As we remodel our house, that's the folder where all those photos go. But a lot of my photos, notice more than half of my library is in this organized by year folder. But what I do is within certain folders, there is a particular event. So if I go to September when my daughter's wedding happened, you'll notice that there's 2 events. There's Spiderland 2022, which I did just for Angela because she loves spiders so much. But there's also my daughter's wedding. And if I click on that folder, that is the folder that has the family category selected. You'll also notice that all I have to do to make that folder an event is click this button, show folder as a calendar event. So because Mylio folders are already smart, the folder already knows that there are photos in here from September 14 to October 14. October 14 is the photos that came back from the photographer. That's why they have a weird date. I actually need to go correct those dates because it shouldn't span that long. But all the photos for the wedding are there, and then there's different photos for different parts of the event. And all of these albums have that family category already inherited. So using albums in a manner that is helpful is really, really good. The advantage of using an album also is that you can find that structure outside of Mylio. So one of the things that I always recommend when people ask me how to organize photos is like, do it the way you will remember. So if you're likely to remember a photo based on when it was taken or where it was taken, then use that in your categorization, right? Like when people say, do you have any photos of octopus? I'm like, yes, I take photos of octopus all the time in Seattle. That's where I take the most photos of octopus because we have the biggest octopus in the world. So when I go to look for, instead of going to all my 4,000 underwater photos, I'm more likely to go to specific dive sites that are in this region because I know I'm more likely to have an octopus photo there. Really, what I do is I type the word octopus because all my octopus photos are keyworded, but that's another story. What other questions do we have?
So another question from Sandy. What about creating events that are in the past? I think it's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Now, how granular you get with that, how much detail you put into it, that's completely up to you. But like if you bring in, let's say you're scanning in pictures. I have this little album of pictures that was from my parents' wedding. I scan in all those pictures, they're all in one folder. So I can easily make an event with that folder of mom and dad's wedding. So you can go in there and do that for as many or as few things as you want. I've gone back through my calendar and added events for, big vacations we've taken or kind of those momentous life events like my wedding day or, my 21st birthday or something like that, those kind of life events. And that also gives some additional information to Mylio and how it prioritizes your photos. So things that you've marked as life events and you've made events out of, Mylio sees this and goes, okay, those are a little bit more important to you. And there's a variety of things that Mylio prioritizes based on all of these different rankings and information that you add to your photos.
Absolutely. So just to demo what you just mentioned. So here I went to my calendar view to the year 1981. That seems like such a long time ago. To May, and here there's a bunch of photos of my 6th grade graduation. So when I click on all those photos, I can right mouse click and go to the contextual menu. You can also get, oops, let me do that again, select all, not that one. You can also go to the action menu, which is down here on the bottom right. If you're using a mobile device, that's where you would find it, but there's the new event item there. And all these photos happen to have the same date stamp because they were done from a scan, right? This was not taken with a camera, but I can say this is JC's 6th grade graduation. Category, that would be family. Apply. And it is scoped by date. So an event can be scoped by folder or by date. In this case, we're doing it by date. And you can say, you can assign a priority to the event. So in this case, I don't know that the 6th grade is a live event, but it was probably one of the biggest things that happened to me that year, right? So let's call it event of the year. And when I hit save, that event is now saved. And you'll notice it is there. It has the little reddish tag for family events. So when I step all the way back to 2000 or to the decade view, I can see that event there. And I could do the same with other events. There's my brother's wedding, different birthday parties, etc. So yeah, events are not quite as addictive as doing face tagging, but they're close. They are close because this is what we record, right? Especially when it's family related. It's like, what are the things you want to remember? So.
All right, so a couple more questions in the chat. Lynn says, how can I tell if every photo in my all photos is in a folder? Is there a way to filter for that? So every picture you brought in is in a folder somewhere on your hard drive. Mylio doesn't physically hold your pictures. It points to them in your folder. So if you want to see which folder a picture in all photos is coming from, you can right click on it and say reveal in folder. So JC, you want to show that?
Yeah, I was also showing that the folder path is right here on the info panel.
Yep.
But if I click show me in external, because this photo, the original file, only lives in my external hard drive. It's not in this computer. So when I click reveal in external, it's going to open a Finder window. And I have a lot of screens, so I got to find which screen it opened. There it is. It opened and highlighted where in my hard drive that photo is. So if I click here, this is my computer. This is the drive that my Mylio library lives in. My primary vault is called main media. There's the Mylio folder within that drive. Mylio pictures, trips, Galapagos 2006, Galapagos underwater. So I can see exactly what folder that photo lives in, which is the same as the path here, which is showing me the Mylio pictures, trips, Galapagos 2006, Galapagos underwater. You can also say show me in folder. So instead of opening the external computer file system and showing you the folder there, you can see the folder representation on Mylio. So if you say show in folder, I can click there and it'll take me to that Galapagos underwater folder. And from there, I can navigate my way back. And for those of you that don't believe in color correction, look at all the variants of that same photo. So color is a thing.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right, so another question from, yeah, that was good. Another question from John. When I scanned my old slides, they were all assigned a date in 2009, which I'm guessing is the year we bought the scanner.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never had the real dates for these old pics. I assume there's no systematic way to discover the real dates. A lot of times that's going to require a little bit of personal research.
Yeah.
The beauty of Mylio is you can kind of make your best guess. So the first thing I would do is grab that folder that has all of those slides, and I would mark them as undated. So that way they're not cluttering up the wrong date in your calendar. And then you can go in and start using that as a place to, just kind of your to-do list of things that you want to research. And you can grab the low-hanging fruit and be like, all right, you look through them and go, okay, I know that's the year that my kid was in 6th grade. All right, what year was that? And so just assign a year. You don't have to have the specific date, but you can assign a year or a month or a decade and get them close to the right place on the calendar as you go through and work through that to-do list in the undated category.
Yeah. If you notice, one of my top level folders is called scans, and that's where I put all of my scan photos. And when I go into that, I have other subfolders. And what I did is I organized them in rough timelines, like college years, early years, high school, places that I live, like when we lived in Ohio or Seattle or Puerto Rico. But you'll notice that for a lot of these folders, the date range starts with undated because some of the photos in that folder do not have a date yet. And it goes to dates that are known. And what's great about the Mylio calendar is that if you assign undated to a photo and you scroll all the way to the top of the calendar, here's all the photos for which I have to yet found correct dates. So Mylio creates an automatic to-do list, is what I call it, or a to-do container of all the photos that I still need to date. And if I go in there, I can go, oh yeah, this is photos for which I need to find a date. And these photos right here were all taken, like these photos right here, those 5 photos, that one too, were all taken on the same day when my niece was getting certified to be a scuba diver. So if I could remember that day, I could just go here and either put the exact date, or if all I remember is the month and the year, then I can give it that. Or even if it was just the season, okay, this was in the summer of 2006, then I can just mark that as the date when those photos happen. And then automatically those photos will go and be shown in the correct date in the calendar. But lots and lots that you can do with adding dates to photos. So I encourage that you check out the date session of our manual, because there's a lot of good information there.
Thank you.
Good idea. Let me grab the link for that, and I will get that put into there we go, adjusting date and time for photos. I'll put that into the chat so you guys have that. All right. So there's a link for that. Are there any other questions before we wrap up for today? It's been some very good questions. I've been enjoying hearing from everybody. Well, if that's all, then I want to thank JC for joining us today. This was a great presentation, super helpful. And hopefully you guys learned a little something new on how to make use of categories to further organize your library, as well as a few other things that we touched on. Because all of these things link together in how you organize and find things in the future. I want to wish you guys a great rest of your day, and I hope you will join us next week for our next coffee break. We're going to have Jefferson Graham. He is the host of Photo Walks TV. It's a really great travel photo walk YouTube channel. He's a lot of fun, and he's going to be sharing smartphone photography tips. So if you're looking for ways to get the most out of your smartphone, I hope you will join us. So we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.